things that I think is very important for all of us is to be able to know what God is doing in our lives. That's part of the reason that we share prayer requests during our community prayer time and pray for specific people. It's also a great chance when we come together to be able to hear each other's stories about how God is working in their lives. So I've asked Jacob Swanson to be able to share today about how God has worked in him. So come on up, Jacob. And we get to hear Jacob's story, what God's done in his life and how he sees that working out. So thank you, Jacob, very much for sharing with us today.
Hi, I'm Jacob Swanson. Carl recently asked me to come and share my testimony and how my career followers really into my life. First, just let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 18 years old. I've gone to Central Valley Christian High School, or school my entire life. I'm going to Arizona State in the fall, and my favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 16:9. Growing up, we're growing in a blended family. My parents separated when I was really young, so that's been kind of something that's really defined like who I am. So I've gone back and forth between homes, my mom's and my dad's house. A lot of people see growing up in a blended family is not really a good thing for a young kid. And don't get me wrong, it was never the best thing. It wasn't always perfect, but those challenges and experiences I've grown up with have taught me to be and really grown me into the person I am today. I think growing up in an environment really did shape me into the person I am. I found that growing up, I could find Christ really anywhere I went. It was almost as if I could find Christ just because of the fact that my parents have set such a great example for me. My parents have always, brought me to church, and they've always kind of been able to give me the ability to have a relationship with my Lord at a very young age. They always really did give me the chance to succeed and give me the ability to just be able to reach a bit higher than I would have been if I didn't have those experiences and that support. I mean, I had 10 people a year from my family come here to support me today, and a lot of people don't get that luxury. I would say that I started to have a real one-on-one relationship when I was in 7th grade. I started going by studying as youth group. There I found many people that come into my life and really shaped who I was. There are 2 people specifically that really did show me what God's love is really about. It was Alex Butler and LJ Lara. Alex was the youth pastor, and LJ was kind of like an assistant youth pastor that helped out. Great guy. They showed me how Christ has affected their life and how he can really affect mine as well. Even though I don't go to by saying that as youth group, what I really learned while I was there is that God always has a plan for your life, and that's kind of been something that's stuck with me and something that's really shaped me, is that I know that God always is there, always has a plan for what I'm doing. In fact, Easter Sunday several years ago, I was baptized at St. Ignaz. My baptism really was unplanned that Sunday. It was something that was kind of just on God's terms and God's time. When I started going to high school, I would say that's kind of when I started to forget that God had a plan for my life. I wasn't always the best student. I think that stemmed from the fact that I wasn't the most mature kid going into high school, and I have a learning disability. And when my GPA started to go down, I'd say that I started to forget. That's when I really started to forget that God had a plan, because I started to think that I wouldn't be able to go to 4-year college. It was really disappointing to me and hard to swallow, because my sister's gone to a 4-year college, so the bar was really set high, and I really wanted to reach above that bar and always surpass them, because I'm a very competitive person. The last 2 years I've gotten a lot older and more mature. I would say that's really what's helped me through the last 6 months. 6 months have probably been a very different 6 months than any really other time, because of the fact that I've had to go through switching from one college to the next in my college decision. I've had to finish high school golf, which has really been something the last 4 years that I spent day in and day out working on. And I graduated high school, so now I'm going from a school that I've gone to since I was 6 years old, 5 years old, to now going to a university where I really don't know anyone. So that's been really hard to swallow and just get used to. And then obviously my mom started to move away to Oregon because she's married, and so I've had that. I've known that the last 4 or 5 years that that day would come, but it's kind of been hard to know that time that started to tick and go away, and that it's really starting to come a lot faster than I had thought. And this really does kind of play into my favorite Bible verse, Proverbs 16:9. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. What this says to me is that you may know what you want to do with your life, but God knows where you're going to walk and what the people you're going to meet and how the people are going to affect your life. This verse really couldn't relate any better lately because for the longest time I thought I'd be going to Biola University where my sister went to college. I applied thinking I would hear back around Thanksgiving. I went down and even the counselor I met told me that I would hear probably 3-4 weeks, right? And as I applied, I thought I'd hear back on Thanksgiving, as I told you, but as I checked the mailbox every day, nothing seemed to show up. And the next thing I know is January, deadline for all the other colleges is January 15th. So I really had no choice but to apply to other colleges. I applied to 4 colleges: Fresno State, Cal State Bakersfield, Arizona State, and Washington State. Sure enough, 30 weeks later, I got accepted to Biola University. I was stunned. I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to get to follow my sister's footsteps. And I was so thrilled that I really didn't think about waiting for all the other colleges to hear back. So I filled out my down payments. I applied, did the paperwork to become biolegal. And I didn't really think to wait because I really just had waited so long. I thought, I just want to get this over with. So I filled it out, everything, and sure enough, as you apply, you're going to hear back from other colleges, right? It's just how it works. I got accepted to Arizona State, and that's where my aunt went. So I had relations with that, and obviously growing up in a household of big USC fans, watched college football a lot, so I knew Arizona State, I knew the environment. And the more I really looked into it, the more I felt like God was giving me the signs for why all this was happening. I always thought, I remember saying to myself, why would I get into ASU so late? I played right at the end of the deadline, day before the deadline. Why would I be getting accepted and giving these signs that I should go to ASU, but I was meant to go to Biola? And so I thought about that more, and I decided to take a visit with my dad. My dad took me down mid-semester, and I couldn't have been more stunned. The campus, the area, the girls, all amazing. I really had felt like I found a place that was home, which that's kind of been hard because I always grown up in 2 different homes, and with mom moving, now I felt that I'm only have 1 home back home, so it's gonna be really weird. So now I felt like I had a place that would be home in Tempe. I had another place that I could call home, and I knew this is where I needed to be. As soon as I stepped on campus, I felt like, this is where I need to be. This is where God's calling me to be. I knew this is where God was leading me to be, and I knew this was the steps He established for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you sharing your story and being bold enough to do that. It seems like we're constantly learning things about life. God continues to direct our steps and give us next steps and show us where we're going to be going. And we're all learners on this thing called life, which I think is a lot of what we've been talking about in this whole series that we've been looking through on wisdom. And I would say, at least for myself, I've learned a lot in this series. We've learned things about wisdom. We've learned that wisdom comes from a relationship with God. We've learned that wisdom comes from oftentimes worship, where worship is the starting point for wisdom, where it reconnects us with a relationship with God. We talked about discipline also. We talked about how discipline is this thing that God sometimes uses to reconnect us into a relationship with God when we stray off the path that God has set out for us. We've also talked about how wisdom, worship, and discipline often somehow fit together in this crazy kind of a way where Proverbs puts all this together, and God shapes us, shows us through wisdom. God shows us that we can ask God for wisdom, that we can put ourselves in certain situations and positions to better seek and receive wisdom. Wisdom, as we've looked and as we've seen, all stems from being involved in and invested in a relationship with God. The more we're invested in a relationship with God, the more likely it is that we're going to see wisdom, we're going to discover wisdom, we're going to see how this happens in our lives. We've been camping in the book of Proverbs for quite a while, and we have learned a lot and seen a lot about wisdom. And I think the way to wrap this up is to briefly look at one other passage, not at all related to Proverbs, in the New Testament, that I think gives a fuller picture of what wisdom is all about and what God has in store for us when we think about wisdom and seek it out. Just as by way of background, briefly, wisdom in the time of Jesus, at least, was a huge deal. It was completely different, I think, than wisdom in our day and age. We don't walk around talking about wisdom, and we don't walk around seeking wisdom, and we don't go to school to get wisdom. But wisdom in their day was that central thing in their culture. It was one of the four main virtues, one of the cardinal virtues in their culture. They had four of them. There was justice and courage and something else in their culture, and moderation. And wisdom, those were the four cardinal virtues in their culture. And they had goddesses that reflected each of those virtues. And these are pictures of these goddesses. And in the Greek culture, their god for wisdom was named Athena. And for the Roman culture, their god for wisdom was named Minerva. I mean, they worshiped these goddesses. They trained, they learned, they tried to get wisdom at all costs. And it was in this culture, before the time of Jesus for sure, but it continued through into the time of Jesus, that this whole industry, this whole discipline of philosophy came out. And philosophy now is something you can major in college, you can get degrees in philosophy. For them, it was this new way of thinking and this new way of understanding things. And you know what philosophy literally means? It means love of wisdom. I mean, if you split it apart, it's philo is love and Sophia is wisdom. You put them together and it's love of wisdom. I mean, this culture was all about seeking out wisdom. They were trying to learn to get it. They would go to school to get it. They lived to get wisdom. And I love what the Apostle Paul does in the New Testament when he basically takes this idea of wisdom that everybody was wanting and everybody was prizing, and he connects it with something that God wants all of us to want and to prize just as much as wisdom. So, here's what Paul does with it. It's from 1 Corinthians. And it's like this. The message of the cross is foolish to those who are headed for destruction. But we who are being saved know it is the very power of God. As the scriptures say, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and discard the intelligence of the intelligent. So where does this leave the philosophers, the scholars, and the world's brilliant debaters? God has made the wisdom of this world look foolish, since God in his wisdom saw to it that the world would never know him through human wisdom. He has used our foolish preaching, that's Paul and his friends, their foolish preaching to save those who believe. It is foolish to the Jews who ask for signs and wisdom, signs from heaven, and it is foolish to the Greeks who seek human wisdom. So when we preach that Christ was crucified, the Jews are offended, and the Gentiles say it's all nonsense. But to those who are called by God to salvation, both Jews and Gentiles, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. This foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans, and God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. I mean, wisdom is huge for Paul. And what's Paul's take on wisdom? And what is Paul trying to do with wisdom? I think the thing that Paul does is he sets up this difference between human wisdom and God's wisdom. Because human wisdom, for the Jewish people, that was this thing where they were looking for signs and miracles. For the Greeks or the Gentiles, they were looking for intelligence and smart things. And oftentimes human wisdom, is, as he describes it, is stuff that we look for. It's stuff that we think we have access to, that we can get wisdom because we do all these things. And then Paul contrasts it with God's wisdom, which is completely different. And what is Paul attached to God's wisdom? I mean, God says that Jesus is the wisdom and the power of God. It's not stuff that we could get. It's not our things. It's not stuff we learn or we pursue. It's just God's given gift. Jesus is the power. Jesus is the wisdom of God. So, how can it be that this thing, this Jesus, that some people say is foolish, can truly be wise? How can something that is foolish to some can truly be wise and the power of God? My grandmother is turning 90 this year, and we're going to hopefully celebrate with her birthday later this year as she turns 90. Every visit I can ever remember to my grandmother's house involved games. My grandmother is the ultimate game player. She could play any game. She's probably heard of every game, and she's played them all. And all we would do when we visited was basically play games. We play board games, we play marble games, we play conversational games, we play games outdoors like ping pong and shuffleboard and pool and all kinds of stuff. We played every game we could think of. She also does the games that are in the newspaper, like crossword puzzles. And she is genius at crossword puzzles. I mean, I sit down and I can get maybe one clue out of the crossword puzzle. She can just rattle them all off. And she even has this custom-made dictionary that she will not throw away because she's written in things that are not in the dictionary that she's learned through the crossword puzzle. So she has this amazing dictionary, and it's incredible what she can do. So not only does she do the crossword puzzles, but she'll also do the word jumble. Where they have the letters that are all mixed up and supposedly they make a word, but you look at it and go, I have no idea what that is. Here's an example. She does these things. She looks at them, and for my grandmother, in a snap, she gets the words. Because she's been doing this all the time. And I look at it and I go, that's totally foolish. Why am I going to waste my time on that? It doesn't make any sense to me. But she looks at it and she says, I know exactly what that means. Like this, if you can see what the words mean. I mean, this is a word jumble. And this is an example of the stuff that doesn't make sense to me. But my grandmother looks at it and she sees the answer right away, which some of you just already got because you're smarter than me. I mean, I look at this stuff and I think it's foolish. She looks at this stuff and she thinks it's obvious. I mean, it's like foolish and wisdom. I mean, the things that we see sometimes that look foolish that God does, in reality, they are absolute wisdom and power that God brings. The foolish see God's wisdom as foolish, but the wise see God's wisdom as wise. God did something in sending Jesus that nobody expected, but something that every one of us needs. I mean, it seems crazy that God sent this 30-something guy to raise a fuss about some religious issues, and then he got humiliated and he died, and supposedly people were saying that this was the salvation of the world. And so many people look at that and go, that makes no sense, that's nonsense, that's foolish. And God said, that's my plan. And the world is brand new through it. I mean, the foolishness is actually incredibly wise. Jesus is who God sent as the embodiment, as this picture of what wisdom really is. And so as we've said for a long time in this series about if we want wisdom, we seek a relationship with God. We invest in a relationship with God. We spend time in a relationship with God. That's really a relationship with Jesus. The more time we invest, the more of ourselves that we give to a relationship with Jesus, the more likely it is that we're going to discover wisdom. Wisdom in our decisions, wisdom in our family, wisdom in our marriages, wisdom with our kids, wisdom in the stuff that we don't understand, wisdom even in the things that look foolish, and we can see how God leads us through these things. God is a giver of wisdom, and Jesus is the greatest picture of that kind of a gift. And I love that God didn't give a thing, God gave a person, so that we can live with this gift of God. My prayer through this whole thing is that we become wise. That we become wiser than we were a month. That we become wise in the decisions we're making. That you become wise in the questions you have that you don't know what to do with. That each one of us becomes wise in our families. That we become wise as a church and know how God is leading and calling us to live and to do new things. If we can become more wise because we're invested in a relationship with God, then that's achieving God's hope for us. Can I pray for us, or can I pray for that? Let's do that.